Ryan, it's great to have you here, man. So excited to sit down and talk with you. Literally just met you for the first time. Like an hour ago, getting off the plane. I know we've talked a little bit in preparation of you being here in St. Louis, and we're so excited to have you for our Adoption Day service tomorrow, which is going to be fantastic. And so I'm getting to know you in real time, just alongside of our audience.
This might be the best way to get to know somebody.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a high stakes
Sit down and throw a mic in front of them and see what comes out, you know? So super excited, man, just to have you here with us. I know you just share our DNA, you share our heart, and man, just so excited to hear what you're going to be speaking on tomorrow, and just encouraging our foster and adoption ministry efforts, and so excited to talk to you about your history with that, not only just your family, but the organizations that you've been a part of. You also host a podcast as well.
That's true.
Which would love to talk about that as well. But I also know we were just talking about the fact that you recently moved to Portland. From California. Tell us a little bit about that journey and what you guys are up to in Portland.
So I've been in Southern California, in kind of the Anaheim area, at a church that Jubilee has a relationship with called Southlands.
Southlands.
Yep.
Shout out Southlands.
Shout out to Southlands. So most recently, I was the teaching pastor there for the last 2 years, and love Southlands deeply. It's a church planting church. It's a church that's always kind of asking God what's next. And so about 15 years of being there, most of the time in leadership. Met my wife there, started my family there. It's just an incredible season of my life. But about 9 years ago, my wife and I really started to discern a call to move to Portland, Oregon to plant a church. She's from outside of Portland, and so we'd fly into the airport, and we just fell in love with the city and realized that there are very few Christians within the city, and it's pretty unreached when it comes to the gospel. And so we just kind of had this mix of, well, we actually love the city. We're not coming there for some like negative reason of it's a bunch of sinners and we want to save them. It's like, no, we love these people. We love parts of this culture. And so how do we contextualize the gospel and plant a church here? So we moved this summer. God was very gracious in the move. Our kids are doing really well. They're 8 years old and 4 years old, loving their schools. And so far, the Lord's grace has really been with us to raise money and send leaders. And so Lord willing, hopefully at the beginning of the year 2027, we'll be opening the doors to a brand new church in the city of Portland, Oregon.
That's so exciting, man.
Yeah.
We need more churches, especially in big cities that, just desperately need of the gospel, and excited for do you guys feel like you're weird enough for Portland though?
I don't think we're weird enough for Portland.
Okay.
My buddy Tim told me that he recently saw a whole campaign called Keep Portland Weirder. And so the bulletin, the billboard was claiming that Portland's not weird enough. We've gotten soft. And so we need to return to our weird roots.
Got it.
And so I'm definitely getting outpaced in my weirdness by the city.
Okay. Keep Portland weirder.
Keep Portland weirder.
So you're trying to level up.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good to know. So your family, has personal ties with the, foster and adoption journey.
Yeah.
And, this is not just, you're not coming at the topic from just an organizational or job history, with that, but you guys have walked through that yourselves. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey with foster care, adoption, how that's been for you guys.
Oh, yeah. Great question. Yeah, I didn't grow up aware of foster care, really aware of adoption. I think I had one or two kind of family friends that had adopted, but I wasn't interested in it. Middle school, high school, as a young adult, it just never crossed my mind. I couldn't have explained what foster care was, but the first sermon I got to preach at Southlands Church actually was in 2013. I had recently graduated from Biola. And the topic I was given was on adoption. And it was actually in a series on like suffering. And so it went through these different types of suffering. And so it was really trying to tackle the orphan crisis globally, to kind of grapple with, whatever it is. I think it's like 153 million orphans worldwide. And so how could the loving God allow for so much death and loss? So I read in preparation Russell Moore's book, Adopted for Life, and just really helped me understand the gospel with fresh clarity. But also I just felt the Spirit invite me to be an adoptive dad through that process. And so I didn't know this, but my now wife, Stacy, was sitting there at Southlands listening to me preach, and she had wanted to adopt since she was in middle school. And that sermon is kind of what firmly put me on her radar as a potential candidate for marriage down the road. And so the Lord simultaneously...
Must have been a good message, man.
I don't know if the message was good. I think the fact that I had admitted and shared in the sermon that I felt compelled to actually be an adoptive dad. So even when we were engaged in dating, we actually got a second job catering for private events, and we started saving up a bunch of money for an adoption fund one day. During that time, my wife had got a job as a life skills coach, helping adult foster youth kind of transition out of foster care. And that was a really difficult job just because of how stacked the cards are against these kids and just how deep like the hole was of love and acceptance. And so it was kind of a discouraging job because it was really hard to motivate the kids to stay in their classes and make something of their life. And they didn't really believe that their life was worth making anything of at the end of the day. And so that just like broke our hearts. And we did some pretty unwise things that I don't recommend. We actually co-signed on an apartment for a young lady to live with her and her boyfriend because we had got to know her two kids through that program. And so we put like significant financial risk out there to keep them housed because they were living on the street. We tried to get them into programs. No program would take them. And we ended up eating a lot of money. But at the end of the day, we wouldn't have changed anything because we were able to help provide housing for that family for a short amount of time. And kind of just these little steps of obedience really opened my heart up to being a foster dad. Because the whole time I was open to adoption, I was not really open to foster care. They seemed very different to me. Like take in a child and permanently love them okay, pour myself out for months, years, just to see that kid return back to the same situation. Like, no thanks, go find someone else. Like, that sounds terrible. But through this process of just one act of obedience at a time and surrendering to the Spirit and really just hearing and the Spirit creating empathy for just the plight of young adults who are leaving foster care, have never found permanency. They've never had someone permanently in their corner, rooting for them, affirming their value. My wife and I, very early on in marriage, started to foster, and we can talk more about that. But in the 8 years that we fostered, we had 11 kids come through our home experiencing foster care. Some of those for a couple weeks, and some of them for a year and a half plus. But that experience of being a part of so many kids' stories and ministering to so many families was just a very transformative process for me.
Yeah. And how long was that season for you guys of fostering?
I think our first placement was 2017.
Okay.
And then this summer we were also fostering, so to 2025.
Yeah.
So
that's a long stretch.
Yeah.
And what's your family makeup now?
Yeah. So my oldest daughter, Nora Grace, is 8 years old. She's adopted through foster care. She was the second placement we ever had. And then my son is about to turn 4, and he's biological.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. We have, very similar journeys, actually. I mean, my wife and I said the same things, like, foster care, no way.
Yeah.
Like, we're like open to adoption. And we even went down that journey. We have our oldest 3 are biological. Then we have our 4th was adopted through a private Christian agency.
Okay.
And it was through that experience, and actually our relationship, primarily my wife's relationship with our daughter's birth mom, that then opened up our heart to the idea of like foster care. And specifically that journey for us was like really feeling like God wanted he opened our eyes to the broader impact of just not just caring for a child that needed it, but the whole surrounding family unit that was struggling, that didn't have the resources, that didn't have direction, that, sometimes, all these stories in foster care, a lot of times addiction involved, or just lack of resources, lack of parenting themselves, which causes them to get into tricky situations.
All of the kids that we fostered, their parents had just really tough stories of abuse and abandonment. And it's interesting, in the Old Testament, the word for the fatherless is yatom, and it's used 42 times. And of the 42 times it's used, 40 times it's paired with the word alma, which is widow. And so God's cadence for caring for vulnerable kids has always been, don't forget about vulnerable kids and their vulnerable single moms. And so even in the communication of God to his people, the drum that he was always pounding in terms of response was to care for the whole family. But I think kind of in evangelical circles, we stopped reading the widow in that pairing, and we severed it. And we had a season culturally where we just focused on vulnerable children. But if you read the text is always pointing us to the family unit that needs to be supported and loved.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and that's one of the crazy things about foster care too, is you're signing up for it. You're stepping into somebody else's struggling world, in that sense. And it feels insane to do that voluntarily, but like that's what we're called to do. And that's what it's one of the hardest things about foster care, but it's also one of the most beautiful things about foster care is being having a firsthand look at somebody else's life, who many of which are the single moms, those that are struggling, have zero support system whatsoever, zero resources, and are trying to do this, figure out this parenting thing. It's like, we have resources, we have support system, and we still find parenting hard, like
totally.
How much more of a struggle is that for, and I mean, one of our now youngest son, who we adopted through foster care, like birth mom was a teenager, it's just like, you can't expect someone that young without a support system, without resources given to them to thrive, in that environment. And so, it's I mean, like I said, it's one of the biggest joys, but also the most challenging aspects of foster care is stepping into those environments intentionally, seeing the weight of the brokenness that people are walking through, and choosing to stick it out, and to be a source of love and support, and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So part of your journey, I know, has been not just walking through it yourself, but also you've been involved in a very significant organization called Foster the City, and would love to hear a little bit about your journey with that organization and some of the impact that you've been able to be a part of through that.
Yeah, Foster the City was started in 2015 as Foster the Bay. So it was in the Bay Area of California, Northern California. And it started because a social worker had requested a pastor for help in 2015. Just at that point, there was a huge deficit of homes in the Bay Area. And social services was realizing, like, without the faith community, we can't actually place kids in homes. And so she asked a pastor by the name of Philip Pattison to consider leading like a faith coalition between the agency and between the churches. And so he prayed about that, started Foster the Bay, and it was just wildly successful. Within a few years, I mean, there were over 160 churches kind of all in, casting vision from their pulpit, organizing info sessions, interest meetings for people to hear more about what it's like to foster. And then they took Promise 686 care model, which is wraparound support for fostering families, developed that out a little bit, And then for each fostering family or recently adopted family in these churches, they had a support friend team of about 4 households that provided meals and childcare. And so it just really grew. And then national leadership from some of their partners were like, hey, you got to do this thing around the country. Like, this thing is singing. It's really resonating with churches. So I was brought on to kind of launch the first chapter, which was in Southern California, LA County and Orange County. And then it rebranded to Foster the City from Foster the Bay. And so it was a absolute privilege to lead that initiative in Southern California for 4 years. We went from 0 church partners to over 50 church partners. We saw, I think, 70 something children placed in homes during that time. And around 40 something families step forward. So it was a really exciting time, and a lot of kids were impacted because of that work. And there's other organizations that do similar things, but I think what I loved during that season was just seeing how people respond when you cast a compelling vision, that the Spirit of God is inside us as the church, and we actually want to live a meaningful life. Like, we don't want to live a stagnant life, but we don't always know what step to take to make an impact. And so when this like twin pairing of powerful and compelling vision and reasonable next steps were kind of married, which I think what Foster the City is, it just really catalyzed the church in a significant way. And I think to date, there's been over 1,000 kids placed in Christian homes because of Foster the City across the West Coast. And now it's a national organization, so they can partner with churches anywhere in the country. And huge fan of Foster the City, and it was a privilege to work for them for 4 years.
Yeah, that's so cool. And for any Jubilee listeners that are on right now, you have directly impacted Jubilee, because we actually took our model that we're currently running with our care teams and everything from Foster the City, and some of the things that we were exposed to, knowing some of the stuff that you guys were doing, years ago. And so, already impacting us, continuing to impact us by your presence here.
Full circle moment.
Full circle moment, which is just so great, man. It's so great to hear the impact of that organization. And like you said, just the vision for what they put forward for churches and for foster care, man. It's just so powerful and so good. It's hard not to hear that call and not respond, to it. And so that's really exciting. I would love to hear your insight on what you feel like is maybe some of the big hurdles that you see from people engaging the foster care world specifically. From your perspective.
I think the big hurdles are all the hurdles that I experienced myself. So they're not as much just like thoughts, but actual obstacles I've wrestled with and reasons that I didn't want to get engaged in the first place. I think a big misunderstanding within foster care is this idea of getting too attached. And I think that becomes a huge barrier. I would often have kids out at playgrounds and just in public, and they're different ethnicities. And so people are always kind of curious, like, hey, how'd this group all end up together? They'd ask us questions, and I'd share about foster care. And I'd say the most common refrain from that experience would be like, oh, I could never do that. I get too attached. Which is an insult at the end of the day, because you're shallow and you're not going to get attached, so you can do foster care. But I'm actually this deep person, and if I did this, I get too attached. But the truth is, attachment is how kids heal from trauma. So Kurt Thompson, who's someone I really admire, says everybody's born looking for somebody looking at them. And I think that's the best phrase of attachment that I can summarize.
Say that one more time for me.
Everybody is born looking for somebody looking for them. So we all are looking for somebody who has our undivided attention. To love, to cherish, to care for, to nurture. And when you don't have that as a child, it dramatically impacts your physical development, your mental development. receiving unconditional love from your biological caregiver is one of the greatest indicators of just overall health. If that is if you're gonna be a healthy person, physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every way. And when kids don't have that for whatever reason, as we've already talked about with empathy and understanding, man, if you were abused as a child and then you have a kid, you don't actually know how to give that type of love. And so what kids in foster care and kids who are adopted into new homes need is that unconditional gaze and love, that attachment. And attachment is just the process of meeting needs over time. So every time a baby cries and you feed that baby, you're teaching that human things about the world. Number one, your voice matters because you cried, you put your need out in the universe, and then it was met. And then your voice matters. And number two, you're valuable, like you're worth being cared for. But when you have a need as a kid in a stressful situation like poverty, or your parents are in an abusive relationship, or there's addiction, you don't get your needs continually met, and you get the opposite message seared on your soul. Like, I don't have value and my voice doesn't matter. Yeah. And so when we take kids into our home, whether through adoption or through foster care, what we're communicating to them is you have value and your voice matters. That's what attachment is. It's loving them enough to get hurt.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Christ has done for us. Like, Christ is the ultimate attachment figure, because at great cost to himself, though separation by sin and darkness, he loved us and poured himself out for us. And so I think we then get to go and play that same role for kids who are experiencing foster care or who need a permanent adoptive home. So I think that idea of, I would get too attached is a big obstacle for people. And as well-meaning as they are, once you actually start learning what attachment is and what mechanism the Lord has created for humans to help each other heal, attachment is the exact thing that you need to be giving these kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think we've had conversations with families that, are kind of wrestling with that idea themselves of just like, how do you do it? You mean you're expected in foster care to develop this familial relationship with this child where they're like a part of your family, and you build that bond and you build that attachment, and then they're just taken away, you know, and like, placed back, and it's like, yes, that is exactly what you're being asked to do when you step into foster care. But I love the point that you made of bring it for the Christian. The framework that we use for foster care is that of Christ. Yeah. And the fact that he took responsibility for our brokenness, and he stepped in to that gap when he didn't deserve that. There was nothing that he did on his part to deserve what he got. And for the foster families among us, or that are considering it, that's exactly the call, is to take responsibility for someone else's broken state and saying, I'm going to bear that burden. And I'm going to provide that attachment, knowing full well that I will suffer the consequences when that attachment is removed, and I will suffer the pain of that relationship when that moment comes where the dynamic shifts and they're
and the word compassion in Latin is a compound word that means to suffer with. And so literally compassion is to suffer with someone. Deeper still, in Hebrew, the word compassion is derived from the root word we get the word womb. So to have compassion on someone, to truly have compassion on them, is not just to carry their burden on your shoulder, it's to carry their burden inside of you. Like a mother carries her child, to receive that burden as your own and to bear that burden until the point of health. That's what compassion is. There's no such thing as cheap compassion. It's not compassion. And so, and if Christ is supporting you and pouring into you, then you can sustain that type of care for someone. That's why compassion fatigue is such a real thing, because to bring somebody's trauma inside of yourself and carry it without the resources of Christ can only lead to compassion fatigue, because that's a burden we can't carry on our own. And so I think that is also helpful when thinking about this. If it was just up to me and my wife, Stacy, to care for these 11 kids, it'd be a bad situation. It's already a bad situation sometimes. But if we're doing it in Jesus' name with Jesus' power, then there's actually hope for healing for these kids.
Well, I never thought about this before until you were just talking about this stuff, but it's interesting how willing we are to suffer for to bring biological kids into the world. There's a cost to that, a massive cost to that. Physical cost. You go, mom's going to go through intense pain and all the emotional roller coasters. For anyone that's been through that knows what I'm talking about.
Yep.
With that. And I wonder if people looking at the lens of foster care, if there's a lot of people that might discredit themselves from the ability to do that, because they see it, as some foreign thing. When in reality, that's essentially what a foster family is doing. Is you're choosing to go through. It's a different kind of pain, but you're choosing to endure pain, particularly at an emotional level. When you step into that. But I think I would just wonder with the right framework, if there might be more people that see it and are actually more open to it.
It has to be modeled. I mean, that it's Southlands Church. When Stacy and I started fostering, we were the only ones fostering. There are a couple people that had fostered, it didn't go well, and then they only did it once type of thing. But we were leading the youth group, and we needed to drop our daughter off. We were fostering at the time at a friend's house, and they were willing to take her. And so they watched her, and that my daughter, now at the time in foster care, kind of stole the family's heart. And in part, it was because of proximity to her that their hearts were warmed, and then they started fostering. And then same thing, they brought people to wrap around them, and many of those people started fostering. And now there's multiple foster families in the church, but it's because they saw an example of it, they saw a model of it. And we have a lot of, preconceived ideas of what kids in foster care are like and what the experience is going to be like. And some of it, these caricatures aren't helpful, but then when you actually see a family doing the work of fostering or adopting, it's humanized, it's real, it's tangible, and you can kind of move forward. I think, too, one of the paradigms is really laid out in 1 Peter, where I think it's chapter 3, where he talks about, if you suffer for unrighteousness' sake, you basically have no blessing. But if you suffer for righteousness' sake, there is a great blessing that Christ gives you. And choosing to adopt and choosing to do foster care is suffering for righteousness' sake. It's a type of discomfort and hardship, but God commands and promises a blessing to you in that space. And I think that is also a really helpful incentive to help us realize, okay, I'm inviting discomfort in my life, but I'm doing it with Christ, for Christ, and therefore He is going to bless me immensely as I move towards these kids.
And I wonder if that's another hurdle or barrier that people experience to engaging foster care is almost like this theology that God's desire for my life is to be comfortable, or this Western Christian mindset that my comfort and my happiness or whatever is somehow elevated over obedience and suffering and engaging hardship intentionally, at times. And I don't know if you speak into that at all about, some of what you see, or if you see that as a barrier, particularly in the West.
I definitely think that's at play. And I think not just for us, but for our biological kids in the house too. One common refrain over the years has been well, how is this going to affect my children? Great question. You should be asking that question. If you weren't asking that question, foster care is probably not right for you. But as you unpack it, this all comes down to what's the objective of parenting. Because if the objective of parenting is to keep my kids safe and give them a strong economic future. Fostering is probably going to be of no value to you and might even be a hindrance. Mm-hmm. But if the goal of parenting is to form my kids in the image of Christ, so they can learn how to depend on Christ, then fostering might be one of the greatest things that I do for my kids, because I model for them and bring near God's heart and resources in my family. And so I think that's another discomfort area. And there needs to be wisdom there. If you're going to foster teenagers, they're going to come almost always with a certain history that you need to be very wise about having them be around the other kids in the home. And so you're not just reckless about it and you're thoughtful. We said yes to 11 different foster placements, but we've probably said no to 12 plus phone calls of kids that the county called us about. Hey, here's a situation. And my wife and I would pray about it. And we're like, that's not a good fit for our family right now. Or, man, we're still pretty beat up from the last foster placement. So let's take a couple months to reset as a family and then take another placement. And I think too, another obstacle sometimes is when you think about foster parenting, you kind of think about the career foster parents, like my wife and I, who did this sustained over a long period of time. But even if you were placed with 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, and then that was enough for you, that's amazing. It's just a handful of hours of training, which is going to help you care for your own kids anyway, and give you empathy for families who are experiencing the social welfare system. And even if you say yes to 1, 2, 3, 4 placements, and then you quit or you finish serving, that's a huge win in the kingdom. And so I think I've also noticed implicitly some people feel like, am I going to be just like destined to foster kids for the next decade? Like, no. Maybe your calling is just to foster 1, 2, or 3 kids, and maybe one of those foster kids becomes an adoptive placement. Or in the stories of needing to adopt like 6 siblings from like a foreign country. And like, maybe it's just 1 kid who needs a forever home. So realizing that you have some control and you can be wise about where you engage in foster care, I have found be really empowering for people as well.
That's really good. And this might be a weird question, but you and I approaching this topic, we've walked through it. I think there's a degree where we're carrying the heart behind it, and it makes sense to us, having wrestled with a lot of these things in our own lives. And obviously part of this conversation, part of what we're going to experience tomorrow, which I know by the time people watch this, the Sunday would have been gone already, but what we're preparing for is waving the banner to get more people involved with this. But I'm curious from your perspective, is there, as people are wrestling with seeing the heart and maybe wanting to lean in, are there good reasons to not engage?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's different levels of engagement. So to become a resource parent, which is another term for foster parent, there are many good reasons. I mean, if your marriage is not in a great spot, you should not be fostering. If your financial situation is not in a great spot, if you have a ton of debt and you're just trying to get your feet on the ground, fostering's probably not your next move. If you recently had like a significant trauma in your life, like you lost a loved one or child passed away, or you're just wrestling with something big, foster care is not the right time or season for that. So in my experience, going through like a private foster care agency, they'll do a thorough assessment and screening. And most agencies are not afraid to say no because they know the implications of putting the wrong person in that position. And so going through the assessment process can be helpful. But there are so many other ways to get engaged. I don't think there might be any real reason to not be on a care team and drop off a meal. Same thing, if you've had a significant trauma in your life, that's probably true. It's not time for service, it's time for healing. But there are so many measured ways to get engaged, whether that's like supporting a foster parent night out, so foster parents can go have a date night and the kids are watched, or dropping off a meal for a family regularly, or committing to pray for one child in a foreign country. have an adoptive home. I think there's a role for everybody, and there's a point of entry no matter where you are. But the depth of its involvement really depends on wisdom. And you should talk to your pastor. You should talk to your community group leader. You should talk to people in your family if you're planning to take a significant step like adoption or being a resource parent. Just say, what do you think about this? Do you think I'm ready for this? Do you think my spiritual life can handle this? And you could take that too far where you're like looking for like a Mother Teresa type spirituality where it's like, all right, nobody meets that standard.
Yeah.
But within reason for you to be healthy. And if you're married, connected to your spouse, you certainly don't need to be married to adopt or foster. You can do that single. And that's a growing segment of people getting engaged, which is awesome. But your relationships need to be in order and healthy, I would say, before you move forward in the more significant commitments.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the role of community plays such a vital part of, I think, foster care. And I mean, obviously that's a lot of what you're saying is like your relational web around you needs to be pretty solid to support this. 'Cause it can't be just you engage in this head on with no support system whatsoever,
Yeah.
And I don't know if you'd have anything else to share about the vital role of a support system or church community, relational. I mean, even in our context, similar to you, there wasn't a ton of foster families when we started engaging it.
Yeah.
But now seeing the number massively increase, multiplied greatly, even in the last 5 years, it feels like there's a sense of stability and community even around foster care itself that just feels so life-giving, so strengthening, for those that are engaged in that process.
That's amazing.
That is exciting. But I don't know if you'd have anything else to share in terms of just the role of community and relationships around that endeavor.
I think one, you have to be a learner to step into this space because kids with trauma need to be parented differently. And so you need to learn about trauma. You need to learn how it affects the brain and the body. And then you need to be willing to adjust your parenting style if you're used to more traditional parenting approach. I think the second one is you need to be willing to accept help.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't feel like you need it. When you don't feel like you need help is the only time you can accept it without going into crisis. Because if you feel like you're desperate for help, it's too late for you to really find your feet in a significant way.
Yeah.
And so I think to go into adoption or foster care is to take the long view and to say, in order to do this, one, I need to become a learner, to really learn my kid and to learn how to parent well based on their circumstances. But number two, I need to put myself in a position to be supported by others regularly in an ongoing way. And some people will critique you for that. We've had foster parents that have gotten a meal every once a week and then a date night once a month. And other people have said like, well, I mean, the kids are adopted, like why do I got 3 kids. I don't get this type of support. And there's always going to be people who don't see the level of suffering that you've taken on to process the kids' trauma. Their trauma doesn't go away when you adopt them.
Yeah.
If anything, there's significant periods like research shows like at 8 years old and 11 years old where the trauma comes out in full color. And it's almost harder than when they were in care to some degree. And so parents need ongoing support, but you have to have a heart posture to receive support. And then if you have adoptive parents in your life, if you have fostering parents, like you have no idea the burden they are carrying. It is just a 24/7 entire soul giving thing to do. And I know a handful of adoptive families who have had like actual smooth sailing adoptions, like very little behavioral issues. And sometimes that just happens as kids' disposition. I can't explain it. I don't know, but I'd say 80+% of the time at some point, like adoptive and foster parents will be drowning. and they're going to need significant support from their community.
Yeah, and a lot of people I don't think realize the neurological impact of adoption, even at a newborn level.
Yeah.
And I'm not scientifically well spoken enough to like go into be able to recite all those facts, and you may even have some helpful insight in that. But I know the research that is out there, which is, there are studies on this of the neurological impact, on even at a newborn level, process, going through that transition from, a birth mom to an adoptive mom, impacts there, even, especially like you said, as they age and they're starting to understand more of their story, and then the impact and the trauma that they walk through, as they understand more and start to ask questions and, almost like reliving their experience for the first time, as they start to comprehend their own story and some of the things that come along with that.
I was meeting with a pastor 3 weeks ago in a church in Portland, just getting to know each other. And he shared the story before he left to come get coffee with me. He had, his wife was sitting on the couch, and he had come behind her, and he just gently placed his arms on her shoulders and went down to just give her a kiss on the top of the head. And she jumped up and freaked out and screamed, "Get away from me." And he had forgot she has a long history of abuse. And I don't think she was in foster care, but some of the weight of kind of poverty and neglect you experience in foster care, she had experienced. And he was like, "Oh, that's right."
Yeah.
Like they had been married for 20 something years, and still he needs to go in front of her, get her attention before he gives her any sort of even just gentle physical contact, because her body remembers the trauma that she had gone through, and it comes out. And so, I mean, that's one of 100,000 ways that your body stores the trauma that it's received, and it comes out, and it's a life-altering experience.
Yeah.
And then, that question of that orphan spirit of like, am I really loved? Am I really fully accepted? Is just one that most adoptees report wrestling with for their entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how sometimes even just having the language for it, having the tools for it, having the education behind understanding what's going on in some of these kids can feel equipping and strengthening for a foster parent to actually lean into that. And I know for us that was a lot of our story, was the fear that we had surrounding fostering, I would say subsided more and more the more educated we got and the more tools that we were given to engage that
Same
process.
With me. Totally. When I learned that there was an actual parenting modality, there was a path carved out for me that I could follow.
Yes.
Was one of the key moments that I told my wife, like, okay, I'm ready to get certified as a foster parent.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Totally.
From your perspective, are you seeing things in maybe the broader realm of foster care that you're excited about?
Yes.
That you would maybe speak on?
Yeah. I think number one, the integration of just like neuroscience and psychology and parenting is just getting stronger.
Yeah.
And surprise at all just affirms a biblical worldview. So that's exciting as a Christian.
There you go.
I'm excited about that. I'm excited that, back in the 80s and 90s, when you talk to parents who adopted now, and they go through this training. Like I literally sat next to a woman in training. She's in her 60s. She's just in tears. Like she is just in tears. Like, how come I never knew this? Like, how come I wasn't equipped with this information when I adopted my son or daughter? Things would have been so much different. So we're at a really healthy place in terms of hunger to learn and to parent appropriately. I'd say another thing is just there's so many organizations to kind of work with and help support adoptive parents and fostering parents in a way that there hasn't before. And then I think one thing that I'm very excited about is your typical foster parent has so often been a young family when you think about them. But I think the future of foster care is in empty nesters. I think we need to shift our baseline picture of a foster parent from a young family to an empty nester. Because if you're a second halfer, as they're called sometimes, you're looking for what is my next envisioned kingdom venture with God. You have experience parenting your kids. I mean, your kids snuck out. Your kids were caught smoking weed. Your kids were fooling around with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, you've seen a thing or two, you know? You've been dusted up.
Yeah.
And you got these rooms, you got financial stability, and the majority of kids in foster care that are waiting for placement right now are over 8 sibling sets, a lot of teenagers. And what they don't need is a new attachment figure. The attachment window is closed, and they're not looking for someone to cuddle up with and call mom and dad. And you in that phase of life aren't looking for that either, unlike that young family. What you can be is a safe place for these kids to fail. And I think that's ultimately what's going to keep them alive and off the streets, is they need a safe place to fail. They're going to fail because they don't have the tools to navigate life. But will they be in an environment where they'll be caught when they fall and held and move forward? And I'm very excited. And for the last 2 years, every time I've spoken on foster care, I've brought this up because I think this is the future of foster care. Yeah. And we need to start shifting our thought from talking to young couples about if they're going to do biological adoption or foster to as soon as someone has an empty nest in our church, we need to say, hey, have you prayed about being a foster parent?
That's so good.
And I think that if we can mobilize and re-envision fresh empty nesters with the gospel and with this call for caring for vulnerable kids, we will transform the foster care system in the United States.
That's amazing. I'm literally thinking of people in my head right now of like that I really hope are listening to this and hearing that. I wholeheartedly agree, man. Yeah. That's such an opportunity that feels like right in front of us.
Yep.
And it's beautiful. Is there anything that you are seeing that you're I hate to flip the coin a little bit. What are you concerned about?
There's never enough families to foster. I think that is a real issue. And there's very few counties that have a waiting list of families ready to care for kids. It's almost always a waiting list of kids waiting for a family to care for them. That's concerning to me. What's concerning to me is resource parents that want nothing to do with the biological family. That still is happening all the time.
Maybe you could double click on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So to care for a vulnerable child, as we've talked about biblically, is to care for their family system, the vulnerable mom behind them, who most likely had the same experience growing up. And when you foster a child, most counties would ask you to monitor visits, meaning to facilitate connection between the kids and their first families. Even if you're not monitoring visits, you still can save artwork from school and pass it on to the family.
Yeah.
The kids during Father's Day and Mother's Day will make crafts at church or at school, not assuming those are for you. Your default setting be like, oh, this is for your biological mom or dad. I'll pass that on to them. Yeah. The kid could correct you and say, no, it's for you. And that's fine. That's their freedom to do that. But working to facilitate, sending them pictures, keeping them involved, inviting them to doctor's appointments. And that can get really tough and tricky, and it's very complicated. And sometimes there might be safety reasons to not invite them to those things, but there is still a large segment of Christians who go into foster care and they're like, I want this kid in my home, but I want nothing to do with their family. And I would humbly say, if you want nothing to do with their family, you should have nothing to do with the kid. And I know that sounds harsh, but I just think biblically, if you're not willing to work towards the restoration of the family system and break the generational cycle that exists in that child's life, then foster care or foster to adopt is probably not your best avenue. You should probably find another way to, and there's so many other ways, international adoption, private adoption. I mean, you don't have to do this route. So I think that's concerning.
Can I ask why do you think people are Christians specifically? Why do you think Christians are so resistant towards the relationship of the biological parents in these situations? You know, a lot of it, like you said, just maybe speaking into that, almost like trying to identify and give some language to some of the fear that might be behind some of that.
Yeah. I think number one is just uncomfortable. I resonate with that. Like I've just had some really, really uncomfortable moments.
Yeah.
Also, like you just get blamed a lot. A lot of times first families don't know and didn't get tools how to like process and like, hey, take responsibility for themselves. Kind of everything was just everyone else's fault. So you get that splashed on you all the time. We've had 2 of the first families accuse us of abusing the kids. And that's been heartbreaking. Like CPS workers coming to my house at 9 at night, asking to see the kids and undress them in front of the social worker and make sure there's no marks. And one time we had to go to a county doctor with social services to look at the kid. And my wife took the child, and the doctor was like tearing up a little bit and just said, "Thank you so much for coming to see me. I normally see kids who are in such bad shape. It's so nice to see a kid who's healthy and thriving." And so that was a chilling admission. I can't imagine being that doctor.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so, but just that dynamic of it's so messy to be in relationship, and it's vulnerable. Like you're both parenting this child, and you as a resource parent, you're not their primary biological parent. You're playing a secondary role, even though you're leading in the instrumental care for that child in that season. And so admitting that and confronting that can be hard. And then I think just on a more practical note, it's just really hard to monitor so many visits. Some judges give, 4 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours of visitation, meaning the foster parent has to facilitate time with the child and their first family for that amount of time each week. So I think there's some practical stuff too, but just that heart posture of I want nothing to do with the family, I think it's an unbiblical posture and does harm to the kid, because that's going to come through as you parent them. The kid's going to pick up on the fact that you're against my mom and dad. That's not going to go good with your relationship. But it also just lacks faith in God's hunger to bring restoration to the families.
I think that's really important. There's because I think so many people from the outside looking into foster care don't understand that the goal of any fostering situation, when you step into it, is going to be reunification. I mean, until that goal by a judge is changed, which takes a lot of time, often. Until that goal is changed by the judge, the goal for everyone involved in that specific case is reunification. Typically. And so that automatically means that there's an expectation to where everyone's meant to be on the same team. And so when a foster parent like takes that stance of being like, no, I don't want them involved in trying to help parent their child, what is their child, that immediately just creates friction and you're not aimed at the same goal, which then I know has caused so many issues within the there's 10 people involved in like every one case. You got social workers, you got managers, you've got judges, you've got all these different roles that are there to just support the child, and then to be the one person that's not on the same team and working towards that same goal of reunification is going to make a a foster parent's job extremely difficult
Yep.
and miserable. And we've seen that actually go bad too with our reputation as Christians within the foster care world, with these people on these teams, at a professional level.
Yep.
And that's like, man, that's heartbreaking to see too, when you're, it's not just our reputation that we're concerned about. Like, as Christians, we're representing Christ in these spaces, and that's why I think the stuff that you're talking about is so important that, it's challenging to say those phrases of like, hey, if you're not on board with this, like, that's actually unbiblical.
Yeah.
Super challenging to hear, but so important to hear, because I think we have to come to the table with the realization that it's not just us, it's not just our reputation at stake. We're representing Christ in a very public space, and there should be a weight and a responsibility that we carry, because of that. That should impact, I think, the way that we navigate those spaces.
Absolutely.
But you were talking about some of the maybe challenges that you're facing. I don't know if you have anything to add either to the positive or the negative side of like what you're seeing, whether it's something you're excited about, whether it's something you see as like a challenge or a barrier. Anything else to add to that?
I think in general, the positive is people are interested in foster care. I think it's now not uncommon for a church to know about foster care, not just adoption, which is still just as important as it ever has been. But a lot of churches are engaged in both now, not at the expense of one or the other. I think that's amazing. And I think we need to keep finding a way to place the older kids who are really struggling. That still is a huge need. And so if we keep catalyzing vision and inviting people into the kingdom and really invite empty nesters into the space, I think we're going to just continue to see significant progress. And the church is very present in many social service spaces now. And social workers know that the church isn't against them, but sees that they play a valuable role in keeping kids safe in our society. And in most counties, there's a willingness to work together in a way that there's been seasons to where the county wanted nothing to do with the church and the church wanted nothing to do with the county. I think we're looking towards each other, and that's not uncommon anymore. And a lot of progress is going to happen in Jesus' name because of that.
Yeah, that's right. That's so good. Well, I would love to have you share a little bit about how people can stay connected with some of the stuff that you're doing.
Sure.
That you've got a podcast as well.
Yep.
Tell people about what you're doing on that front, the name of the podcast, what you guys are aiming to do through that, and how people can stay connected.
Yeah, that's great. The podcast is called Just Neighbors, Practicing Biblical Justice and Compassion Together. So we interview authors and experts, ministry leaders, theologians on different topics like abortion and adoption and immigration and homelessness, and really try to boil it down in a way that we can action, but always with the gospel at the center. So instead of seeing social justice as against the gospel, seeing that it actually grows out of the good news that we've been saved and reconciled by faith to Christ. And from that fresh life that we have in Jesus' name, we then go out as his witnesses to do the things that Jesus did, moving towards the vulnerable. So the whole point of the podcast is to care both for your inner life and your relationship with the Lord, but also to catalyze and mobilize people to hear about different organizations or different books and different ways that they could be more of a just neighbor, a neighbor of justice. So other than that, my email is hello@ryanmacdonald@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram, Ryan MacD, and happy to connect any way I can.
That's great. Yeah. So if you're looking for more resources on the topic, definitely check that podcast out. And if you're in the Portland area,
That's right. Which hit me up. Let's go to church together.
We probably have a vast Portlandian audience, deep I would imagine. There. So if you're in that space, man, look these guys up.
Or you have family or friends. That's what I found. Like maybe you have family or friends that moved to Portland, or you have some connection there.
Everyone's got like a second or third degree connection to a Portland.
Totally.
Or what do they call them? Portlanders? Portland?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know.
Portlanders.
We'll figure it out.
But, that makes sense.
Man, this has been so great. Just hearing your heart and just excited about the impact and the deposit that you have made on our church and particularly on my wife and I. Just some of the impact that the organizations that you've been a part of have made on us, and our journey through foster care has been incredible. So privileged to have you here this weekend, and just excited for what you're going to bring tomorrow morning as well. And we've never done this on a podcast before, but just talking about this immense work that is in front of us and that God has called us to do, not just us individually, but the church as a whole, and the capital C church, to connect to what we're doing, man. I just wonder if you could just pray for us, man. Pray for, selfishly, for our area. St. Louis, the massive need that we have, which we'll highlight, and you can catch the sermon tomorrow, which will highlight a lot of these local details, on our website or YouTube channel. But we'd just love to have you maybe just pray for us and for all of those that are engaged in this great work, man.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Do that.
Thanks,
to close this out. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Lord, you love St. Louis. You love this city. You love this area. You love the people here. Thank you that you have many faithful witnesses at churches across the city and beyond. Thank you that many children have been placed into Christian homes. 107 children impacted just by Jubilee Church alone through adoption and foster care and respite care. That's an amazing, astounding number to me, 107. We just bless your name for that impact. God, we also know that there's about 5,000 children experiencing foster care just in our area alone. Many of them need homes. Many of those families need support. Many of them need to encounter Christ and his power. And so, Lord, would you just catalyze a movement in our area where dozens and dozens of Christians are stepping forward to foster teenagers and sibling sets and kids with disabilities. God, we just pray you do something miraculous in our day that we would not believe if it was told to us. Lord, thank you so much for the adoptive parents that are listening, the foster parents that are listening, the ones that are kind of just barely holding on. Would you strengthen them? Yeah. Would you resource them in the gospel? Would you give them the courage to raise their hand and ask for help? Would you send people to wrap around them to help support them practically and financially and emotionally and spiritually? And Lord, we can't wait to see what you're going to do as you make all things new in the St. Louis area. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, man. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks.